Hello everybody and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about a little game called The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. You've probably never heard of it, it was only one of the biggest games of 2017. Wait, 2017? It's 2 years old, why am I talking about it now? Yeah, as if everybody doesn't already know that Nintendo released a teaser for the sequel. So far the sequel is still unnamed, so I've just taken to calling it Breath of the Wild 2. Tell me if I'm going too fast for you. Given that I made 2 videos analyzing the Luigi's Mansion 3 trailer, you may be expecting me to analyze the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer. But I'm not going to, that teaser was way too short for an amateur analyst like myself. I'm gonna have to leave that analysis to GameXplain. Okay, mentioned GameXplain for the tags, now I can cross that off the to-do list. Alright, that's enough beating around the bush, you know what this video is, it's in the title, my top 10 highest hopes for Breath of the Wild 2. Just so we're clear, this is in no particular order, this just happens to be the order that I thought of everything in. Number 1. Story. Specifically more of it. I know, everybody and their mother has said this, so I'll keep it brief. In the first game, the story was mostly told through flashbacks focusing on what happened 100 years ago. There was very little story based on what was currently happening, and very little development given to the current champions. I am talking, of course, about Prince Sidon and the other 3. That actually just goes to prove my point. I don't even remember their names. That's how little of an impact they had on the game. So, number 1, do that stuff better. Number 2, Ganon. In the first game, Ganon is supposedly spending the entire game regaining his strength, so that he can resurrect himself to kill, maim, enslave, you know, the usual. But the thing is, he's not really regaining his strength. That's just what the story says he's doing. But you could putz around the game forever and it won't matter. Ganon will always just be on the verge of recovering all of his power until you're ready to face him. But this time, I want Ganon, or I guess Ganondorf in this case, to actually be a presence in the game. Like, when you first start, everything is sunshine and rainbows. Well, except for the castle in the sky or whatever's happening at the end of the teaser. Point is, when you start the game, everything seems pretty peaceful. Then, maybe 20 hours into the game, you'll look at the castle and you notice some sort of ominous dark clouds surrounding the castle and you're like, huh, that doesn't look good. I'm sure it's nothing. Then, another 20 hours pass and you look back and now you can't even see the castle behind the solid wall of darkness and now you're like, oh yeah, no, that's bad. I have to do something about that. But by then it's too late. Ganon's already at full power and he is ready to paint the town red. And the other towns, he's painting everything red. And it doesn't look good. He's using a single coat and it's not even an even coating. There are bubbles everywhere. So basically, if you don't drop everything and run straight to the final battle at this point, then it's an immediate game over. And I know what you're thinking. Wait, this game is supposed to be about exploration. I don't want to have to rush through that just so I can beat the timer. And I agree. That's why I would want the timer to have a difficulty setting. On easy, there's no timer. On normal, you have, I don't know, we'll call it 60 hours. And on hard, 35 hours. And just so we're clear, the timer difficulty would not affect the rest of the game. If hard mode returns, you would still be able to play hard mode with no timer, or you could play normal mode with a hard timer. It's 2 independent difficulties. But wait, if there's a time limit, then you could end up in an unwinnable position where Ganondorf is ready to attack, but you're not ready to fight back yet. Well, first of all, if you're good enough, you're always ready to fight Ganondorf. But, just to be fair, if you do end up losing this fight, you will get the option to either rematch with Ganondorf immediately if you think you can handle it, or you could add some time to the timer, or even turn it off altogether. See, I thought this through. Okay, number 3, a map. But wait, there was a map in the first game. Yeah, I know, that's not what I mean. See, I went back and forth on this one for a bit. Do I want a brand new map to explore, or do I want to revisit the map from the first game? And I don't know. They both have their pros and cons, and I couldn't decide which I'd prefer. Obviously, reusing the map from the first game would cut down on development time, but personally, I don't mind waiting a few extra months for a game if that extra time results in the game being better. So this point really doesn't matter all that much to me. But on the other hand, reusing the original game's map does offer an interesting opportunity. By making subtle changes to the landscape, or even not so subtle changes, you can tell a story just from the environment. Maybe there are new towns being built to show that the world is recovering from the Great Cataclysm. Wait, that doesn't sound right. No, the Great Cataclysm was from A Link Between Worlds. I meant the Great Calamity. Gee, how could I have mixed up those names? On the other hand, I already said that, didn't I? On the other hand, having a new map would also be great, even though it wouldn't lend itself as readily for story purposes. Because gameplay-wise, it would be way more exciting to explore a new map than the same map a second time. So ultimately it could work either way, and I'm all for whatever they choose, as long as they make the most of that choice. Okay, number 4. On a somewhat related note, more dungeons. Breath of the Wild had 4 dungeons, the Divine Beasts. I like the Divine Beasts just fine. In fact, I probably like them more than most people. That's not what I meant. I mean, I like the Divine Beasts just fine. In fact, I probably like them more than most other people did. But the thing about the Divine Beasts is that they aren't really dungeons. They're more like puzzle boxes. You have to move and shift and reshape them so that you can get them in the proper orientation for you to progress. In other words, the entire beast is basically just one giant puzzle. And that's great. I think that makes for a really interesting dungeon design, but maybe limited to just one dungeon. Because I do think that this game would benefit from bringing back the classic dungeons as well. And while we're on the topic, you can cut the number of shrines in half. Or even fewer if you want. But then that brings up the question, well, what about all the heart containers and stamina donuts that we're not going to be able to get without those shrines? Which brings me to number 5, the side quests. Now don't get me wrong, Breath of the Wild had plenty of side quests. It's just that most of those side quests were kinda lame. Like, I went out of my way to do this thing, and all you're gonna give me is some food? I can get plenty of food by going into the forest and picking a few hardy radishes. Oh, except for the side quest that let you get a house. That was pretty cool. So how do we fix the side quests? Well, the easiest answer is to just have some of the rewards be heart pieces. Or spirit orbs if we're gonna stick with those. Although, it might be kinda weird if a random NPC has spirit orbs on hand. Although now that I think about it, it's kinda weird that NPCs used to just have heart pieces on hand. Why do I always have to try so hard to get them if other people just have them? Okay, number 6, Playable Zelda. It doesn't even have to be Zelda, really. It could be anyone. Prince Sidon, Linkle, Tingle. There you go, everybody would love that. Would everybody love that? I'm gonna be honest, I don't exactly know where Tingle stands with the fanbase. I mean, I personally don't dislike him, but he does have an entire TV trope named after him, and it's not exactly a flattering one. Anyway, just let me play as someone other than Link. I don't even care who it is. Number 7, horses. In Breath of the Wild, at least in my playthrough, horses were essentially useless. Because, well, yes, a horse would allow me to travel faster, I spent too much time climbing up cliff sides to ever really use a horse. And then in the late game, you get so many fast travel locations that stopping to get a horse is just counterproductive. So how could they fix this? Well, the simplest solution is also the oldest solution. Bring back Epona's song. Well, actually, I guess it would work more like Twilight Princess, where you get a whistle and then you use the whistle to summon a horse whenever you need one. It's easy, convenient, and some other third adjective that describes a situation that I can't think of right now. Gotta stick with the rule of 3. Number 8, enemy variety. This one is pretty self-explanatory. Breath of the Wild didn't have the widest variety of enemies. We had what? Bokoblins, Moblins, and Lizalfos were like the main enemies. Choo-Choo showed up occasionally too. Keese and Octoroks were really annoying. And Lynels appeared in a few places too. Is that everything? Oh, hang on, I forgot about Wizrobes, had to look that one up. Look, all I'm saying is that the Zelda franchise has a rich assortment of enemies to choose from, and yet there are only 8 different types of enemies in Breath of the Wild? Where are the Stalfos, and the Zora, the evil ones, the River Zora? What about the Wallmasters, and Bubbles, and Armos, Beamos, Darknuts, Gibdos, Redeads, Poes, Peahats, Like-Likes, Tyke-Tights, and the birds from Wind Waker that sounded like dying cows? The point I'm trying to make is that Breath of the Wild had the enemy variation of a Goomba Tower from Super Mario Odyssey. But I'm hoping that Breath of the Wild 2 has the enemy variation of a Goomba Tower from Super Mario Maker. That is to say, varied. Number 9, weapons. I probably don't have to tell you what was wrong with the weapons in the first game, considering it's one of the most common complaints about the game, second maybe to story. Basically, if you've never played the first game, I think it might be illegal to have never played the first game, but just in case you haven't, I'll quickly recap the weapons system. You find a weapon, and then it breaks, and it's annoying. Okay, now that we're all caught up, let's move on. The point of this mechanic was to encourage players to try out several different types of weapons. Now, this is the part where I was going to offer a possible alternate strategy that they could use to encourage players to switch weapons. And I wrote out like a full page explaining this alternate idea where each type of weapon would be strong against a certain type of enemy and weak to a different kind of enemy, thus incentivizing players to switch weapons. But as I thought about it, I realized that my idea wasn't actually fixing the problem. It was just changing the problem. Because the problem with Breath of the Wild's weapon system is that it forces you to switch weapons whenever one breaks. My idea for Breath of the Wild 2 just forces you to switch weapons when you're not holding the one that's most efficient against the enemy that you're fighting. That's not a solution. It's not even a step forward, it's a lateral movement at best. In order to truly fix this problem, you would need to devise a solution where it's ultimately up to the player to decide if they want to mix up which weapons they use. Players should be able to use one weapon throughout the entire game if that's what they want to do. The goal should not be to make players have to switch weapons. The goal should be to make players want to switch weapons. How would you do that? Well, I don't know. I'm not even sure if you really could. At least, not without greatly increasing the complexity of battles. I mean, think about it. In the first game, battles always boil down to mash the attack button until the enemy winds back for an attack, jump in the proper direction, flurry rush, rinse and repeat. And that strategy works for pretty much every battle, from a red bokoblin all the way up to Ganon. Battles are always more or less the same. So what if we change that? What if each weapon has its own unique fighting style? Like, lances are long and cumbersome, so maybe you can't dodge as well while you're holding one. If you want to use a lance effectively, you need to focus on spacing and controlling where your enemies are in battle so that you can use your long reach to your advantage without having to worry about your hindered dodging ability. Clubs would be big and heavy, so they'd take a while to swing, so you have to play patiently. Wait for an opening before you attack, or else you'll get punished. And then swords will be fast, but weak. So if you're using a sword, you have to be aggressive. Keep your enemy off balance so that you can hit them a bunch of times to make up for doing less damage per hit. Or I suppose you could just forget about all the other weapons and just let us use the Master Sword the entire time. It'd be less work for the developers and less annoying for the players. And finally, we've made it to number 10, the Croak Seeds. If we're gonna overhaul the breakable weapon system, then we're not gonna need to upgrade our inventories anymore, which is gonna render the Croak Seeds useless. But we can't just get rid of the croaks, so instead, I don't know, maybe they can upgrade something else? Maybe they can enhance Link's abilities, like give you a permanent 10% increase to damage done. Or maybe croaks could just act like any of the other species. The Lost Woods could just be another town for you to visit. It'd be so funny if the Lost Woods became some sort of tourist hotspot. I don't want them to go that far. Okay, so those were my top 10 most wanted wants for Breath of the Wild 2. And here's the obligatory, this was just my opinion, please don't hate me. Unless you really want to. Who am I to deny you your misplaced outlet for anger and frustration? Anyway, if you've watched this far into the video, thank you very much, it means a lot. And if you didn't watch this far into the video, then I can say whatever I want about you, you jerk. And if you skip straight to the end of the video, I don't know why you would do that, but if you did, you only cheated yourself because you missed the secret password to my hidden treasure. And I'm not repeating it. You can watch the video again. I'm not saying the password this time. It's too late. You missed it. Alright, that's enough out of me. Do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe. I know it's annoying when people say that, but all the big time YouTubers say it, and I'm just a small itty bitty YouTuber. I'm allowed to beg for subscriptions. Okay, see you next time, everybody.